All right. So, hi, Father William.
Hello, Father Brett.
And hello and welcome to Friends of St. Elizabeth and anybody out there who might listen to this. Father William and I are starting something new, trying something out, having sort of a supplemental conversation, I guess. In preparation for confirmation and choirs class. Would you call it supplemental?
Yeah.
I guess.
And for any of you who just want to learn something, maybe.
Learn about the church.
Learn about the church.
What we believe, yeah. So that's the goal. That's what we're doing. Just going to have a conversation about that. And we thought that we would first start out by talking a little bit about our own backgrounds, because that's something that we commonly ask folks when they're starting a confirmation class to do. So we thought that we would start off by giving you a little bit of our background, who we are, what we do, how we came into the Episcopal Church, that kind of stuff. So, William, how did you, who are you and what do you do and how did you come into the Episcopal Church?
I ask myself that question on a moment-by-moment basis every day of my life.
It's a good question.
It is a good question to ponder. My name is William Simmerling. I won't say my age because maybe that's not something we want to share. I'm in my late 20s. We'll put it that way. I am a priest. I am a son. I'm a brother. I have a twin brother. Fun fact. I'm a spouse. I have a husband. His name is Ashton. I grew up in East Tennessee. Grew up in Northeast Tennessee in the Tri-Cities region. What do I do? I am a priest here at St. Elizabeth's. I'm the curate, so I'm a baby priest, been ordained 7 months. And actually today, on the day we're recording this, is the 1-year anniversary of me being ordained a transitional deacon, which is really special. My church background is interesting because I did not grow up in the Episcopal Church, which is a story that is heard more and more these days.
Oh, yeah, I would say that's more common than not, for sure.
So I didn't grow up in the Episcopal Church. I grew up in a United Methodist Church. But as some of you may know, the United Methodist Church is very broad and very diverse in how it is church. So I grew up in a small, rural kind of country Methodist church. So my joke is we said the creed depending on who the pastor was. So yeah, we didn't really have a set liturgy, if we would use that word. We had certain things we always did every Sunday, but it was not in any means liturgical. It was hymns and a Bible reading and a 30-minute sermon and a pastoral prayer and an altar call and then a hymn, and then we're done. Communion on the first Sunday of the month. And that's what I grew up in, and I credit that place with forming me into who I am today. It was a very loving community. It was all family oriented. It was small. I mean, when I was a kid, we probably had 80 folks there on a Sunday with kids around our age, as my brother and I. My mother's family, a couple generations back, had helped to found the church, so we did have a familial tie to that community. So did Sunday school, VBS, all that stuff growing up. And then as I got older, kind of into late middle school, and I started to have some self-discovery of identity and me being like, maybe I'm not like all the rest of the kids, and discovering that I was gay, I began to seek out other ways of spirituality and stuff. And I also credit that with just my extracurricular involvement. I was really involved in music and choir and stuff, and was exposed to sacred music through those extracurricular activities. So like I sang in Latin, and I was like, oh, this is fun. I wonder where this comes from. So I'd go on like a Google dive and would read about different churches and church history and stuff. So that was all floating around my brain. And then in late high school, I just was not being fed spiritually. I was in a rut, spiritually, and I would probably say emotionally as well. And I just got on Google one day and started Googling, and I knew about the origins of the Methodist Church and how it had come out of the Church of England. So I just was on Wikipedia and Google and stumbled upon the Episcopal Church. And I liked what I saw. I liked that it was Protestant yet Catholic, and we can dive more into that later and what that means. And there was like some of the classical hymnody that I'd grown up with. And then I discovered, and I would say the real reason why I'm an Episcopalian is I discovered the sermons of Gene Robinson, who for a time was a very controversial figure in the Episcopal Church and Anglican Communion. But he was the first openly gay person consecrated and ordained a bishop, and that was way back in 2003. And because of that, a lot of churches left the Episcopal Church at that time. But his sermons were just, it was the first time I'd ever heard the gospel was in his sermons. And they weren't all about gay issues. I mean, they were just really good sermons. And I watched every single one I could find online. And towards junior and senior year of high school, I would sneak over to Johnson City to St. John's Episcopal, shout out to them, and go to like a healing service every once in a while. And that was my first like Episcopal service I attended, and I just fell in love with it. And it was great. So, and then started undergrad at UT here in Knoxville, and found out about Tyson House, which is the Episcopal and Lutheran campus ministry. And first week on campus, I got involved there. And between Gene Robinson and Tyson House, that is why I'm where I am today. Tyson House was a really robust community when I was there, and it was all student-led, and we had great clergy support, and that's where I learned what being a Christian was all about, and what being a Christian in like this particular flavor of Christianity was all about, between our service and outreach and just the liturgy and friendships and community. So it really all kind of started there.
Cool. Yeah. And we intersect a little bit there with experiences at Tyson House. Just as an aside, because I think it is confirmation-esque, it's so fascinating to me to hear people from the Methodist Church talk about their experiences and their liturgy and everything, and knowing that, at least in my experiences, most Methodists that I encounter do not know the Anglican roots of the Methodist Church.
Yeah.
and there's some controversy about this, but it used to be said, at least pretty certainly, that the Methodists were named as such, Methodist, because they so methodically followed the prayer book, the Anglican prayer book, because of the Wesley brothers, who were Anglican priests, didn't want to wait for a bishop to come and ordain more priests, so they took it upon themselves to do so, thereby being kicked out of
the Church of England.
And so the Methodist Church was born. But you don't see that today. It doesn't look, some places in the Midwest doesn't look so much like the Episcopal Church, but it definitely did at one time, and that's why they were called Methodists. So just an aside, interesting.
Yeah, and I would never poo-poo like growing up Methodist.
No, I don't mean that. I just
it was great. Well, no, I know that, but like and it's because it is like regional. I mean, I think here in the South, if you grow up Methodist, that's very different than like if you're in the Northeast.
Yeah, and Midwest Methodist looks very different than Southern. Yeah, for sure. So anyway, just an aside.
Shout out to John and Charles Wesley, sponsors of this podcast.
Yeah. So my story, my journey to the Episcopal Church is much shorter and less detailed than Father Williams, because I was born into it. So I am what they call a cradle Episcopalian. Interestingly, Wisconsin roots, German Catholic, German Lutheran, and there was just a tiny bit of Episcopalian in there. And in the Catholic Episcopal family that my mother came from, they chose to raise the children Episcopalian. And then when my father married my mother, he was Lutheran, and that was close enough. So they raised us Episcopalian as well. So my brothers and I were cradle Episcopalians, born and raised in Knoxville. Went to, for those who are local, went to Church of the Good Samaritan in Cedar Bluff my entire life and was very involved. yeah. So I did all the things. I mean, was very involved in acolyted since I was a little kid. Served at the altar. I was like the youngest vestry member. Did all the stuff. Very active in youth group. Anything that they did, I was in. So it was a big part of my life. Was really fortunate, in my opinion, to have like youth leaders and confirmation class leaders that exposed me at a very young age, 10, 12, to alternate forms of prayer, I guess. So meditation and things like that. I was exposed to those things very young, and that spoke to me and continues to be a big part of my life. So my angle on a lot of things is sort of spirituality and spiritual practices. And that I can sort of trace that back to there. But yeah, I don't know, personal life, grew up a little bit wild and all that stuff and rebelled and those kind of things. And those are stories for another day, but always remained a part of the church and had a faith life always. Went to Appalachian State in Boone, North Carolina. And that's where I experienced my call to ministry, to ordained ministry. Thought I was going to be a therapist and was journeying down that path, and then found myself. I had this wonderful, wonderful professor of philosophy, and this was before Facebook and before all those things. And I wish I would be able to find him and remember his name. I remember it was Brian, and I've called App State to try to trace like who this guy was, because he wasn't a full professor. But I was having all these questions, and he called himself a soft atheist, and he was just so generous and wonderful and would sit for like 3 hours after classes with me as we would just like dive deep into huge theological and philosophical questions. And it was just a wonderful thing. And I noticed together with that in my long walk back to my apartment in Boone, I caught myself reciting the creed over and over again, the Nicene Creed. And once I noticed that, and as I sort of asked myself, like, why are you doing that? It sort of hit me that I was doing that because I was making sure that I could say in good confidence that I actually believed those core Christian tenets, which is part of confirmation, and we'll talk about another time. It's hard to explain, but that's how my call experience happened. That I was reciting this creed over and over again to make sure I could say I believed these core Christian tenets. And then when I asked myself why, I was like, well, because you're supposed to be in the church. And so that changed my life. I came back to UT to finish school here because I wanted to go through the discernment process in my home diocese. Did that, got involved with Tyson House, as William was talking about. And that is also how I met my wife, through a mission trip through Tyson House. And yeah, we were married, went to Virginia Theological Seminary, and then graduated from there in Alexandria and came back to Knoxville, served as a curate and then as an associate for 10 years, and then came and felt called to come to St. Elizabeth's and have been here almost now coming on 7 years. So that's the long and short of it, who we are and what we do. Let's see. So, I was confirmed in the Episcopal Church. You were confirmed, I assume, in the Methodist Church.
Oh, no.
And then
so this is where things get a little messy. So, no, I was never confirmed as a Methodist. I was actually baptized twice. Found that out about a year ago. So that I was... So kind of going to like the Methodist church I grew up in was a little bit more evangelical, I would say. So when I was in, I don't know, early middle school, there's always a big youth conference in Gatlinburg.
As you do.
And I was saved there. I still don't really know what that means, even after having a Master's of Divinity degree. Don't really know what that means, but I was baptized by immersion after that. But I'd been baptized as an infant, but that kind of got lost in the paper trails over the years. So I guess if we wanted to say I had an adult affirmation of faith, I guess it was then, except I was in 6th grade, and I wouldn't really consider that a...
That used to be. I was confirmed in 6th grade. It used to be normal.
So that happened in middle school, but in 2017, I was confirmed as an Episcopalian at St. James here in Knoxville by Bishop George Young, which was special.
So that's I don't know that this is I don't know if this is helpful for me to say, but what we're actually going into now is talking about what is confirmation, reception, reaffirmation. And those things have shifted those in the Episcopal Church and how we view them. So interestingly, we could take your story and use that as a way to talk about it, right? Because I would, the way the Episcopal Church views it today, what if I encountered you and you weren't an ordained person, you were just here at St. Elizabeth's, I would say you were baptized as an infant in the Methodist Church. I would call that being saved moment, your kind of adult commitment of faith being confirmation. And then I would have said technically, not that it's wrong how you did it, but then at St. James, you would have been received.
Yeah.
Right. So you would have gone through the education and all that stuff, but just had a different prayer said, So that's like a good sort of example, but yeah. So, what is confirmation, Father William?
Well, I'm going to just read a definition to start us out with. So according to the Book of Common Prayer, 1979, which is where we find all of our worship things and really kind of says what we believe and who we are, it says about confirmation: in the course of their Christian development, those baptized at an early age are expected, when they are ready and have been duly prepared, to make a mature public affirmation of their faith and commitment to the responsibilities of their baptism, very important right there, and to receive the laying on of hands by the bishop. Those baptized as adults, unless baptized with laying on of hands by a bishop, are also expected to make a public affirmation of their faith and commitment to the responsibilities of their baptism in the presence of a bishop, and to receive the laying on of hands. So when I read that, 2 or 3 things really stand out. So confirmation is a mature public affirmation of someone's faith. Mm-hmm. So what does mature mean?
Right, that could be teased out a lot.
That could be teased out, and I think it is an individual case-by-case basis. I know some 7th graders who are very mature, who I'm like, yeah, you could be confirmed. I also know some 7th graders who I'm like, maybe not, and that's okay.
Sure.
So mature, public, it happens within a regular Sunday service, affirmation of faith. And it's a commitment to your responsibilities of baptism. So confirmation and baptism are intrinsically tied together.
For sure.
At a confirmation service, the whole congregation renews their baptismal covenant, the vows they make at baptism. And so it's a mature public affirmation of faith tied in with baptism, and it involves a bishop, which neither Father Brett nor I are a bishop. So our bishop, the Right Reverend Brian Cole, will confirm and receive people into the church. Why is it a bishop? Because in some Christian traditions, a bishop doesn't have to confirm. In Lutheran churches and even in Roman Catholic churches, just a priest or a pastor will do the confirmation. But for Anglicans, historically, it's always been the bishop, and that's because it's sort of a link to the wider church. Because the bishop is the chief pastor of their diocese, so all of the Episcopal churches in a specific region. So by having the bishop do the confirmation, it's kind of signifying to all of us that, we're part of something bigger.
The greater church.
The greater church.
Yeah.
We're part of something bigger than just this parish family, which is kind of cool.
For sure. Well, and that's a huge part of our identity as Episcopalians is being part of the Anglican communion, right? Being part of a much larger body. Yeah, so that points to that as well, for sure. Yeah, but the other little thing that jumps out too in that second paragraph is, if you are baptized as an adult, and that wasn't done
by a bishop
with the laying on the hands of a bishop, then you still would
Still
be
would need to be
confirmed.
confirmed.
I feel like that's actually, to be honest, often lost.
It is.
In the way
Yeah.
we're doing things more recently. So
And that's a provision because, way back when because our current prayer book came out in the mid-70s, the baptism of infants was much more common, and it still is common, but even today, adult baptisms happen more often than not. They're very common. I mean, we've had some here at St. E's in the last couple of years.
Well, and particularly, the Episcopal Church is more and more made up of folks not like me, not cradle Episcopalians. And so we are, when we offer a class like this, we are encountering all sorts of different backgrounds and ways that folks have been baptized and or made adult commitments of faith, right? So, and I guess in particular in other denominations, adult or older children baptisms are much more common. So
yeah, so it's interesting.
Yeah. So who should be confirmed?
Well, dear listener, if you were baptized as an infant or a young child and you have yet to make a public affirmation of your faith, maybe you should think about being confirmed. Or if you've been baptized as an adult, but you weren't baptized by a bishop, maybe you should think about being confirmed. And, there's not really a time limit on this. I mean, if you were baptized as an infant and you're 80 years old and haven't been confirmed, you can still be confirmed. The confirmation isn't just a thing for teenagers. It's a thing for anybody. There's no age limit to it.
And it really, I mean, we haven't touched on this level, but that really is, I think, obviously, as you said, the most important part of this is you're affirming the promises made on your behalf in baptism, like if you were an infant, right? So you're taking those promises now yourself. And so there's that spiritual side of what confirmation is in faith commitment. On a practical side, too, no one in the Episcopal Church has to be confirmed or received. But aside from those spiritual kind of faith commitment pieces, there are some practicalities like, if you ever felt like you might want to serve on the vestry, which is like our board of directors, right? You have to be a confirmed person in good standing in the church. So there are aspects like that as well.
If you ever might feel a sense to the ordained ministry, kind of need to be confirmed first.
Check that off the list.
That's a pretty big check off the list. So yeah, I mean, it's not time bound, but there are practical matters that it is important, and it's just a good time to, especially if you're an adult, to just kind of really think about what it means to be a Christian. I don't think you're necessarily being confirmed in You are being confirmed in Episcopalian because it's happening in an Episcopal church, but you're just being confirmed as a Christian. You're standing up for those beliefs that you think are true in your life as a baptized person, as a Christian. So
right. So taking the promises as an adult for Christian faith, and also committing to this flavor of Christianity in the Episcopal Church.
And we are for sure a unique flavor among the Christian bodies.
Say that again. Yeah. So that's confirmation in a nutshell. Reception, we sort of already went over, but that's if you've made that public commitment and been confirmed. Now that's in certain traditions. Then you would be received into the Episcopal Church. Right?
Yeah. So reception was kind of they kind of threw it in when they were making the prayer book, because I think maybe the folks who were the architects of the prayer book looked into the future and kind of saw that, well, American Christianity is changing, the Episcopal Church is changing, so we need to make a provision for those who were maybe confirmed or brought up in another tradition, but find us. So the official definition for reception isn't found in the prayer book. It's found in this great document called the Constitution and Canons, which, if you ever need an exciting read to go to bed, this will do it. Mm-hmm. So the official definition for reception is Those who have previously made a mature public commitment in another church may be received by the laying on of hands by a bishop of this church rather than confirmed.
Right. So it's really just if you didn't have the laying
On of hands by a bishop.
in this church, right?
And it does get a little gray because it goes on to say in a different, and I didn't pull that exact verbiage, but like it says something about if you were confirmed or made a mature commitment in a church that we are in full communion with, meaning that the Episcopal Church recognizes this church as another Christian body. We can share ministers with each other, things like that. Those churches are another Anglican church, part of the Anglican Communion, the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America, the Moravian Church, and even though we're not in full communion with them, the Roman Catholic or the Orthodox churches, because they have bishops in what is called the historic succession. They have apostolic succession, meaning they have bishops that one could theoretically trace way back through the centuries, their Episcopal heritage.
It's not to get in the weeds here, but that sort of frustrates me because you don't really even need that specification, because anyone who's made an adult commitment of faith in another tradition and hasn't had the laying on of hands of this tradition,
be received.
Right.
Yeah.
So you don't even really need to go there. Fun fact, though, and to get further into the weeds, and we'll talk more about this another time, when it says Anglican Church, right? Not to be.
This is getting way.
I'm not trying to be
weeds.
nasty, but technically, any quote unquote Anglican church you see in the United States as of today is not part of the Anglican Communion and is not under that understanding.
Yeah.
The Episcopal Church is the only Anglican church in the United States.
The Episcopal Church is the member of the Anglican Communion in the U.S.
Correct.
Because you can drive around and see, St. Swithin's Anglican Church in your town, and that is and this is me speaking as William, I would consider that a schismatic, meaning they have broken away from the Episcopal Church, the Anglican Communion, and they're doing their own thing. And they have not yet been recognized by the Anglican Communion. Correct. And if they need to do that in order to be church, that's okay. But they're not necessarily Anglican.
Yeah. I just think it's important to clarify because we say Anglican Church a lot, and I think a lot of our folks will drive around and see those signs and just naturally, understandably make the assumption that is what we're talking about when it's actually not. But even there again, someone who made an adult commitment of faith in one of those churches can certainly come and be received. Right.
For sure.
So, okay. And then reaffirmation is sort of self-explanatory. You've already done all these things and you just are in a time in your life where you would like to reaffirm or recommit, those promises.
And I think this is a wonderful practice. So my spouse, Ashton, he is planning on reaffirming his vows this year when the bishop comes, because it's been 10 years since he was confirmed. And I think every 5 years, every 10 years, I think it's something nice to do. Just kind of as I still believe all this. Yeah, I want to re-up on it.
Well, and I think we might have said this from the get-go, or maybe not, but if you are at St. Elizabeth's and you're listening to this and wondering, so these are reasons you would come to the class we're offering. Or I want you to come to the class, even if that's why we intentionally call it an inquirer's class too. If you're just new to this flavor of Christianity and just want to learn more and you're still not sure about what you want to do about any of these options, please still come and learn about our faith, about our practices, about our history. So it's offered to all. So,
yeah, for sure.
All right, I think that kind of wraps us up for this very first edition of what are we calling this?
We're calling this, drumroll please, Church Chat.
Oh, that's very cute.
It's got an alliteration.
Yes,
if you all need to know,
I'm a fan
Father
of alliteration.
Brett loves an alliteration.
Yes.
So please send us alliterations maybe that could be a thing. If people send us a good alliteration, we could share it.
Yeah. Yeah, you're welcome to do that. I do like alliteration, especially in names for things. But anyway, so this is Church Chat, and we will be doing a few of these in the near future in preparation for our Confirmation and Choirs class. It was fun, and
It was fun.
We'll catch you guys next time.
See ya.
Thanks.